In the spaces between our prayers and their answers lies the sacred territory of God's timing. The waiting isn't empty. It's where faith finds its deepest roots. Perhaps the most powerful prayer isn't, "Lord, give me this," but rather, "Lord, give me this in your perfect time." Have you ever felt the ache of a dream deferred? That hollowness when heaven seems silent to your most earnest prayers? When Abraham stood beneath the star-filled sky, God promised him descendants as numerous as those distant lights. Yet seasons turned to years, and years to decades. The promise remained, suspended in time, while Abraham's hair grew gray and Sarah's hope withered like autumn leaves. Moses spent 40 years tending sheep in Midian before the burning bush called his name. Joseph languished in prison, forgotten, before his prophetic gifts elevated him to Pharaoh's right hand. David was anointed king as a young shepherd, but lived as a hunted man in caves and wilderness for years before taking the throne. These weren't divine delays. They were divine preparations. In our instant world of same-day delivery and streaming entertainment, we've forgotten a profound spiritual truth. God isn't bound by our timelines. His wisdom operates in a dimension where 1,000 years are like a day, and a day like 1,000 years. The psalmist writes, "Wait for the Lord, be strong, and take heart and wait for the Lord." These aren't empty words of patience. They're an invitation into the workshop of the divine craftsman who shapes our character in the waiting. Think of the olive tree. It takes 15 years before it bears its first fruit, but once mature, it can produce for centuries. What if God is growing something in you that isn't meant for a season, but for generations? What if the delay isn't a denial, but the very soil in which your purpose takes root? In Ecclesiastes, we're reminded that He has made everything beautiful in its time, not in our time, not in our neighbor's time, not in our culture's definition of the right time, but in His time, the perfect convergence of preparation and opportunity. Consider the transformation of a pearl. It begins with an irritation, a foreign object that the oyster cannot expel. Rather than rejecting it, the oyster envelops it, layer by layer, in a substance called nacre. What began as discomfort slowly transforms into something precious. This doesn't happen overnight. It requires time, sometimes years, yet the faithful covering. What if, right now, in your season of waiting, God is covering your irritation with layer after layer of grace? What if the delay is the direction? The Apostle Paul understood this paradox intimately. 3 times he pleaded with God to remove his thorn in the flesh. 3 times the answer came back, not as healing but as sufficiency. "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Sometimes God's most profound work happens not in answering our prayers as we envision, but in transforming our hearts while we wait. Isaiah tells us, "Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." Notice the progression. First we soar with initial enthusiasm, then we run steadily, and finally, we learn to walk faithfully. The mature. Faith isn't always soaring. It's the quiet strength to put one foot in front of the other when the path seems long and the destination uncertain. When Jesus walked this earth, He never rushed. He never panicked about time. When Lazarus was dying, He deliberately waited. When the disciples were straining at the oars in the stormy sea, He came walking, not running, across the water. When the crowds pressed in with their urgent needs, He often withdrew to quiet places. His life teaches us that divine timing rarely aligns with human urgency, but it always aligns with divine purpose. Perhaps you're standing at the shore of a Red Sea moment. Before you lies an impossible barrier. Behind you follows the army of your past mistakes, regrets, or circumstances. The pressure to act now feels overwhelming. But remember Moses' words, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Sometimes, being still isn't passive resignation, it's active trust. It's standing firm while God parts the waters in His time, not yours. The ancient practice of kintsugi in Japan takes broken pottery and repairs it with gold. creating something more beautiful than the original. The cracks aren't hidden. They're highlighted, celebrated, transformed into the most striking feature of the restored vessel. God doesn't waste our waiting. He doesn't squander our suffering. He weaves golden threads of purpose through the broken places, creating something more beautiful than we could have crafted on our own timetable. As this moment draws to a close, I invite you to breathe deeply into the space of waiting, to see it not as empty postponement, but as sacred soil where God plants the seeds of tomorrow's blessings. The farmer doesn't frantically dig up seeds every day to check their progress. He trusts the invisible work happening beneath the surface. He understands that seasons cannot be rushed, only honored. If you're waiting today, take heart. You haven't been forgotten. You're being formed. The master craftsman is at work, and his timing is never late, never early, but always, perfectly, right on time. The path ahead may not be illuminated in full, but the next step is always enough. And in God's economy, nothing beautiful is ever lost in the waiting. If this message brought peace to your heart today, subscribe to Sacred Horizon, where every story leads us closer to God.